live on YouTube, and you may begin whenever you're ready, Karen.
Thank you, Sean. Good evening, Restonians, and welcome to the regular board meeting of Reston Association, January 27th, 2022. I am Karen Anton, your president. Hope you all had good holidays and are keeping warm. I have no opening remarks this evening, so without further ado, I would like a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
So move.
Discussion?
So is there a second? So we can discuss?
Tim.
Did somebody?
second.
I'll second for this.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I don't know if this probably needs to be corrected. My copy still says approval of the December 16th regular board meeting agenda. So I don't know. I don't believe that got corrected. Okay, is there any discussion?
I have one small change.
Okay.
I'd like to take item 7, the PrAC recommendations, off the consent calendar. I think there's a placeholder for that in the treasurer's report, so I'll leave it to your discretion whether we need to create a separate item for that.
Bob, can you respond to that?
There's a, I will be making a motion which is virtually identical to the PrAC recommendation, so in the treasurer's report. So I don't believe we need to make a change.
Okay, so we don't need to remove that. Okay, and Bob, didn't you have a, weren't you going to move to remove item I?
Oh, yes. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
We're asking that item I be removed. We did not get to it, a discussion of this particular issue at the fiscal committee, and we felt it was premature to discuss the issue at the board level without getting weigh in by the members of the fiscal committee.
Okay, so you are moving to amend the agenda to remove item I, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second that,
Okay,
but I also have another one.
okay, is there a discussion on that? Okay, so if there are further motions to amend the agenda, I have to take those individually though, I believe, right?
Yes,
Or
I
do-
believe so.
Okay, so let's vote on Bob's amendment. Then, all those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed? Good to see you, Mike.
Hi, thanks.
I'm glad.
Feeling good. Yeah, everything went
Hope
fine.
everything went well. Okay,
Yeah.
so that carries. Okay, so that amendment passes. Okay, what else? Yes, Jennifer.
I have a couple. One is if we're going to remove item I, then I think that we should remove item H and do them together at a future meeting, because item H also doesn't cover what I requested it was going to cover. But I do think that those two go together, or complement each other, and could do them at a future meeting.
Okay. So you are moving that we remove item I from the, H rather, from the agenda also.
Correct. The audit evaluation process.
Yeah, okay, so is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that carries.
And Karen, I have some
Yep.
others. Okay. On the consent calendar, number 8, the Shadowwood Pool final report and recommendations, and also the Razor recommendations report card, which is item 6. My understanding from speaking with Tony is that if we approve these on the consent calendar, they are, we're not just accepting the report, but we're also accepting the recommendations. And I believe that some of those should be discussed, but I'm not sure they should be discussed tonight. So I would normally recommend pulling them off a consent calendar and moving them into an agenda, but I'm not sure that they should. So I guess I motion to remove those 2 from the consent calendar as well.
It doesn't require a motion to remove things from the consent calendar.
Yes, just an objection.
Yeah, it's an objection, but normally then we assign them later in the agenda. And what my request is
They'd be deferred to another meeting.
right, they be deferred. So do I have to do a motion to defer those 2 to a future meeting or just
Correct.
object? Okay,
You
then
can,
I motion to defer item number 6 on the consent calendar, the Razor recommendation report, and item number 8 on the consent calendar, Shadowwood Pool final report and recommendations to a future meeting.
Is there a second to that motion?
That
it needs to be a specific,
To-
if you
to-
defer indefinitely, that's a separate motion than if you were deferring it to a specific date. If you're picking a specific date, it needs to be the February meeting, the March meeting, something like that.
I'm happy to make it at the February meeting, but I was hoping Bach could, help us with the date. Anyone have a preference? I'll say February.
will second that.
Defer both of those to February. Okay, and they will come back to Bach.
I think Director Dowling has this kind of.
So, yeah, Jennifer, is that the idea that they'll come back to Bach?
Yes, that's my preference. I just don't want to mess you guys up if you guys get to Bach and decide it should be March. But I think I have to pick something, so I picked February.
Okay,
Madam President, I'm sorry, Tim had the precedence here.
yes, Tim.
I want to make 2 points. Jennifer, I'm not sure if you saw my latest email on this, but Jennifer and I had an email exchange earlier today, and there was a concern expressed about potential budget implications of the Razor report card. I did talk to EAC Chair Doug Britt. There are absolutely no budget implications whatsoever. The reference to engaging wetland solutions was not a reference to a contract with Wetland Solutions. It's simply to call them and ask them whether, as a matter of courtesy, they would provide existing wetlands maps to EAC for free. So there are no budget implications at all with respect to this report card. The other thing I would say more generically is this is a status report. It's a status report. I understand the idea that if a committee makes recommends that the board take action and that gets put into a consent calendar and that the consent calendar is approved, you are effectively approving the recommended action. This report card does not recommend any action whatsoever. It is a report card. It is a status report. And this just strikes me as micromanagement at the most obvious level. So I would oppose taking it off the consent calendar or rescheduling it for another meeting. If it's too late to put it back on the consent calendar, I would greatly prefer that we have a discussion and vote on the report card tonight so that EAC can proceed with the tremendous work that it does on behalf of Reston. Thank you.
Yes, John.
I'd like to express a timing and workload concern about moving both of those to the February calendar, as the Bach or at least as President Anton knows, there are a number of things, time-sensitive things coming from BGC for the February calendar. So I would like some flexibility for Bach to decide, where they go because of that. So
Thank you,
does that make
Chairman.
sense?
I will also, yes, thank you. I appreciate that. And I was also say, I agree with Director Dowling. I don't see what the purpose of deferring, accepting the racer report recommendations would be. Yes. Jennifer.
I guess just to elaborate a little bit, and thank you, Tim. You've been kind today in emailing back and forth. And I think we just ran out of minutes before we got to this meeting. But when I asked Tony, we would be accepting the recommendations in these reports, I kind of felt like moving them later in today's calendar would not give PrAC and the EAC chairs the opportunity to be here during the discussion. I thought that was important. And the second one is, accepting in the Razor report, accepting the recommendations. I'm not sure what I'm accepting as a board member. Am I accepting what EAC is reporting, or am I accepting the column in which staff is making comments and some of them are to take things off the report card. So I honestly, I don't know what I'm accepting in that one. The PrAC one was more, if we're going to accept a recommendation to change a pool name, might want to have a discussion on it. Those types of concerns. Thank you.
Yes, Tim.
There's a very simple answer to that question. If we approve, and it's important to distinguish between two different kinds of documents. There is an EAC work plan. That's of a different nature, and it's not what we're discussing right now. What we're discussing right now is the Razor report card. It is a status report. And if we approve it, we are not approving any recommendations. The status report provides the staff recommendation to the committee. It provides that as information. This is simply an FYI. It is simply an update to the board from the committee. And I'm getting this straight from the chair of EAC. No one is trying to circumvent or do an end run around the board's authority. No one is trying to sneak in a contract without a proper board approval. To the extent that the staff is recording staff recommendations in the staff comments section of the Razor report card, that is simply an advisement to the board that this is where the conversation stands as of today. That's it. There's no request, there is no ask from EAC to the board that we authorize any funding or any activity whatsoever. It is simply informational. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, so Jennifer, do you want to?
Madam President, Bob Vitrina has his hand up here.
Sorry, Bob.
Are you still intending to combine both?
Well, I was about to ask
The second,
Jennifer that.
the
The second
Shadowwood
was-
Pool does have recommendations.
Yeah, so do you want to keep the motion as it stands, Jennifer, including items 6 and 8?
Yes, I do,
Okay,
because I appreciate, Tim, your perspective, but if there are staff recommendations in the Razor report to pull things off and to do things, and again, I'm not saying anything about circumventing from a board perspective. I literally just don't understand, what are we consenting to?
Those are staff recommendations to the committee.
And why is the board taking action on the report at all? Like, does it need to go back to them and they decide,
It was
what
provided.
the actual recommendations to the board are?
It was information that the committee sent to Bach as along with its work plan. That's what it is. It was information the committee sent to Bach along with the work plan. We need to approve the work plan under our governing documents. This was backup information because EAC wants the board to know where things stand with the RACER report. That's it. It's purely informational. That is not my perspective. That is the perspective of the chair of EAC.
I would add that we do this every year. The board looks at the RACER report card and just accepts it and approves it. So, and to bring it back to Bach doesn't make any sense. What is Bach going to do with it other than, say, okay, we'll put it on the agenda for discussion, but there's nothing for Bach to discuss about it.
And the chair did make a presentation to Bach and was available to answer all questions. And Bach came to the determination that this is routine, that it doesn't require any discussion, and that it should be put on the consent calendar. And now we're talking about kicking it to a different meeting. I just think it's not a good way to run a railroad.
Any other discussion? All right, I will call.
Madam President?
Yes,
Director
John.
Webb wants to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron, I didn't see your hand up.
Thanks. I just want to say that I have similar concerns and confusions as I read it. And so it definitely garners, it should garner the discussion of the whole board, not necessarily in this part of the agenda right now, as we're trying to set the agenda. But I think something as momentous of this was not appropriate for the consent calendar. So I agree with Director Juszczyk.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, then I will call the question. All those in favor?
In favor, whatever, I'm sorry.
In favor of removing the two items from the consent calendar, item 6 and 8, and deferring them to February, I believe was the motion.
Yep.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And nay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion carries.
Karen, can I just make a quick statement?
Yeah.
I was EAC liaison last year, and like you said, this has happened every year. The only reason I'm voting for this is if we move it to the agenda item, we don't have Doug here to participate. And I know they don't have to, but it's always nice to give them an opportunity. So when it comes to Bach, if we could consider having it as an agenda item, so we do actually get the Doug Britt presentation in Feb. And I'll bring that up again at the Bach meeting as well, if you want.
Well, it's already been before Bach, so as far as I'm concerned, it will just go on the February agenda. Then there's nothing more for Bach to do with it.
Doug already gave his presentation.
Correct. And then we ask that they do it to the board too, because it's nice that the members get to see it. So.
Not if it's on consent calendar, we don't.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, the motion carried.
Yeah.
All right, so any other amendments to the agenda? Yes, Aaron.
So I have a request that items 3, 5, and what was the disposition of item 7? Has it already been moved to the regular agenda?
The discussion was it's on there, but it will actually be presented as formal motions as part of Bob's treasurer's report. Right, Bob?
Yes, exactly.
So, I
did object. I did object to 7.
Okay, so because
off.
he objected to 7, 7's on the regular agenda, I also object to 3 and 5, and that they be placed on the regular agenda or deferred to another meeting. at the president's discretion.
Aaron, I hate to pick on you, but that's an improper motion.
Okay, I'm not moving. I'm just saying I object to that, and I leave it to the president's discretion.
Objecting, and then if there is a motion to defer it, that would be a separate vehicle.
Right. And I leave that to the president's discretion.
So objecting to it being on the consent calendar, does that imply that we're putting it on the regular agenda for tonight?
Correct.
Unless there's a motion to defer it.
Yes, I mean, by operation of Robert's rules, it is now on the regular agenda. It is now open before the agenda is approved to being deferred.
Okay, so we're talking about MTAC, EAC,
The two work plans are
the two work plans,
one plan.
and number 7 we've just discussed.
7 has already been done, that it's on the, it's been objected to and moved off the consent calendar.
Okay. So we are, so then we will move that number 7 to, what are we doing, to adjacent to the treasurer's report? Because it is going to be discussed as part of the treasurer's report.
Karen, 7 is moved to Feb. That's the motion we voted on. So we're just talking.
Wasn't that 6 and 8?
No, we didn't
8.
vote on that. 6 and 8 are moved to February.
Got it.
So what are we doing with 7?
Is it appropriate? I motion to change item G to treasurer's report / prac recommendations.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Discussion?
Do we have prac chair tonight?
The
We have-
recommendation
we
is
have-
going to be
We have
identically.
the board liaison. Okay, any other discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, all those opposed? That was 2, Tom, you and me. And abstain. 1, 2, 3 abstentions. Okay, so I never know how to treat this when there's 3 abstentions. Okay. So does that carry or no?
No.
Fails.
It fails.
Abstentions are treated as a no vote.
Okay, thank you. So that motion fails. So so where does that leave item number 7? It's off the consent calendar, but it's not part of item G now, right?
I would suggest, Director Chuck has her hand up.
Yes.
Okay, so I motion to make prac recommendations item H and to make MTAC 2022 work plan item J1 and what was the second? Oh, and EAC 2022 work plan is J2, although they're not J's anymore because we did take H and I off. So I guess J now moves to I. So I say I is land use, I1 is MTAC, and I2 is EAC. which would make public hearing J and executive session L. No, K.
Okay,
K.
I need that repeated. I'm sorry.
Sure. So I motion to make PrAC recommendations, item H, MTech work plan, 2022 work plan, item I1, EAC 2022 work plan I2, public hearing J, and executive session K.
Okay, has that been seconded?
No one likes that one. Okay,
I'll second it.
I'm trying.
I have a question, Jennifer. Why do you want the two work plans pulled off consent?
I didn't pull them off a consent. I'm trying to just get us an agenda with items on it. They were pulled off a consent, so we now have to place them somewhere. And I think they're appropriate near the land use updates. That's why I put them there. For PrAC, I put it next to the treasurer's report because I think that they're appropriate near each other.
Okay, so I guess I'm still would like to know why they were pulled off consent. If somebody could answer that for me.
I think it was Aaron's request.
Aaron pulled them off of consent.
Yes.
So we have to just place them.
Yeah. Aaron?
If any director objects to any item on the consent calendar, it comes off into the regular session.
I'm sorry, say that again?
If any director objects to any item
No,
on the
no, I understand. I understand that. I guess I was trying to find out why you objected.
we can talk about it when we get to that portion of the agenda.
Okay. It's gonna be a long night, folks. Yes, Larry?
Just for the same concerns, I mean, with the work plans being pulled off, neither of the chairs of those committees who worked on those are here to discuss it. So I'm a little concerned about that.
Thank you, Larry. I was going to make that motion.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point.
Exactly.
Yeah, to not.
Can
have
I,
it- Yes.
can I move to,
Well, there's a motion on the floor. That
No
we
one
have-
no one seconded mine, so my motion's not valid yet.
They did,
No.
they did second it.
I
John
seconded
seconded
it.
it.
Oh, you seconded
oh,
it?
sorry,
Oh,
sorry.
That's why
Sorry.
we've been discussing it. Yeah.
okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So
And
we
from
need-
my perspective, I'm happy to have it fail. I was just trying to get us an agenda.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, and abstain. Karen. Okay, so I guess we need a motion then to defer these two items to,
So moved.
no, John, you're shaking your head. Isn't that what has to happen?
Well, it is. It has to be deferred since we can't find a home for it today. But I'm aware of what all is headed toward the February meeting, and that concerns me.
Yeah, I know.
And some of those are very time sensitive from BGC.
Yeah, and of course, it's the 2022 work plan, so we don't want to defer it too long into 2022. So I don't know. What does this board want to do?
I guess we don't have a choice right now.
Unless there's a motion to reconsider.
Well, we have to do something with them because they've been pulled off consent, and that's a done deal.
Correct. You can't reconsider being pulled off consent. That is a director's right.
Okay,
I will move then that we defer those two. I will move that we defer them to March. Is that helpful from your perspective, John, as far as what BGC needs to get done this term?
I have no idea what the February agenda is going to be, but you know, especially one of them needs to be done in February.
Yes, Sarah.
Karen, can we say no later than March? That way BOC, when it gets to, we can make a call. Maybe we can put 1 or 2 in Feb and spread it
That
out.
would be the improper motion. But you could defer to February and then kick it again if you don't have time. You'll recall, John, I think Karen, you were on the board. There was a while there that we were kicking resolution 5 every meeting for about 6 months. So it can be done. The precedent is there.
Until we finally deferred it indefinitely.
Well, my memory of that is different. That actually, while resolution 5 was before the BGC endlessly, it was not before the board endlessly.
I think you're talking about 6, conflict of interest.
So
Half an hour.
Yeah.
And we-
you are, I sit corrected.
That kept, no, Tony, I think, aren't you talking about that one instead of 5? Because that kept kicking down the road.
It is irrelevant for the purposes of argument. My memory may be foggy. But you can kick it to February. And when Bach adopts the agenda, put it towards the end. And if you get to it, great. If not, you make another motion to defer to kick it to March. Or whatever Bach decides to do.
Got it. Can I?
Yes, I did. I think Jennifer may have had her hand up, and then I'll get you, Sarah. No? Okay, Sarah.
If we put it to February and have it as informational, and that way, if people had questions, we would have the chair there and we can just address it and quickly move on. I don't see it taking too much time. And like Tony said, if we don't get to it, we can push it. So I'm happy to make the motion, or if you want to amend your motion, I'm okay either ways.
Yes, Larry.
The other, kind of in line with what Sarah said, if you move it to February, then, if Aaron has questions about the particular work plans, either working directly with the chairs or the staff liaisons or the board liaisons, hopefully we can get those questions and concerns answered in advance of that. So whether it's informational or something else, at least we get the answers out there.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, we'll put it at the bottom of the February agenda, BOD agenda then. Those 2. So now I'm lost. Was it just those 2 in this motion, this last motion?
Yes,
Okay.
Which 2?
We still don't have.
number 3 and number 5.
Yes. Yeah, we took care of Prac. Okay.
It doesn't have a home on the agenda yet.
No, Prac doesn't have a home.
There are 3 that have come off the consent calendar that do not have a place on tonight's agenda yet.
Okay. And that is 3, 5, and 7, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
And 6.
6 and 8, there was a motion to defer them to February.
Right,
yeah, that's been done.
that's
Oh,
been done.
thank you.
That carried 5-4.
Got it.
Okay, so now we need a motion to defer items 3 and 5 to February.
3, 5, and 7.
No, 7, we're gonna find a place for tonight, right? I thought. Or are we deferring that one too? I thought that's what we were going for with Jennifer's motion and that failed. Okay. Do you want to defer them
No,
all?
I'll-
We can Defer them all just so we can get moving here.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
I'd rather motion to defer 3 and 5 to February.
And then find a place for 7 tonight.
Because
don't-
half of it is in Bob's fiscal
Right.
report. So then we can't vote on it because we just deferred. I'd feel bad voting on it. Guess we could.
I thought voting on it is part of Bob's treasurer's report
It is a recommendation by fiscal,
by fiscal,
Which-
but
which confirms the recommendation by. Prac
reconfirms
to
the
say the same
recommendation
thing.
of PrAC. So we're dealing with the fiscal recommendation of the PrAC recommendations separately,
Okay,
apparently. Okay. All right. I will move to defer items 3 and 5 to February. Is there a second? Thank you. Any more discussion about that? All those in favor? Anybody, any nays? You're a nay, Tim, and Aaron's a nay. Okay. Okay, so that carries. Those two are deferred to February. Okay, now, I need a motion for what to do with item 7. Anybody? Yes, Bob?
I move to move item 7, Prac's recommendation, to coincide with the treasurer's report as item G.
Okay. So to incorporate it into item G.
Yes,
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion?
Didn't we already hear this
I
motion?
thought we voted on it. I had the motion and it failed.
I thought that your motion, Jennifer, incorporated several things that we were pulling off consent and finding a place for them on tonight's agenda.
Yeah, that was my second attempt. My first attempt was just to combine the treasurer's report / PrAC recommendations, and it failed.
Okay,
Madam President, I believe I voted against that motion. Our Assistant Secretary can confirm that. If that is true, I can move to reconsider, I believe, and I do so.
okay, and I will second that. Okay. So any further discussion?
Christina, is that correct?
I think I voted against it too, and I will vote for it this time.
I'm showing that Director Mooney voted for that motion.
Okay, then I cannot make that motion. I'm sorry.
Did I vote against it?
Yes. Yes.
All right, I will move to rescind Director Chuck's motion. No,
Reconsider.
to reconsider her motion to add consent calendar item 7 to item G, the treasurer's report.
second.
Any discussion there? All those in favor? Okay. Opposed? Abstentions? Aaron, the motion carries.
Madam
All right.
President, I move that we combine item C7 with item G. So we.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
reconsider.
thank you. Okay, is there a second to that?
Yes,
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, was that 6? All those
think-
opposed? Abstentions? 3, so it was 6-3?
Yep.
Okay, so that carries. Okay. I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
so move.
Second.
All those in favor? opposed. 1 opposed. That motion carries. Okay. So I think, okay. So now, do we have to, how do we deal with the consent calendar now? We do it by what's still remaining on there individually? Tony, what do we do?
You move to, I move to approve the consent calendar as amended.
That takes care of it?
Yep.
Okay. I move to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Discussion?
Discussion? Yep. I'm sorry, discussion. Tim, did you have something?
Yes, I'm going to abstain, and I'd like to briefly explain why. The election ballot, which is item 9 on the consent calendar, includes language the Elections Committee added in response to allegations that my campaign engaged in voter fraud last year. The allegation was made by another candidate and one of his allies. They don't mention me by name, but it's clear from the context that they're accusing my campaign. The allegation is both offensive and extremely bizarre, and because of that, out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to abstain on this vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, this is of approving the consent calendar as amended. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And Tim has said he's abstaining, so that motion carries. Okay. I think we're ready for member comments. Did anybody sign up, Christina?
No, no signups. I do see one hand.
I see him too. Yes, Mr. Flashman.
Good evening. My name is Erwin Flashman. I live at 1327 Buttermilk Lane. I come before you this evening for 2 purposes. First, I want to announce that I intend to file my candidacy for the Lank Ann Tall Oak seat on the board. I have given this considerable thought, and I have decided I can do more while being on the board than I can from the sidelines. As you all know, I do a lot from the sidelines with the board and various committees, and have for many years. In fact, I served on the EAC for 9 years, and for 6 years was the vice chair. In 2020, the board named Sue Beffel, former EAC chair, and myself as the 2 55-plus volunteers of 2019. Over the years, I've dealt with development, environmental, governance, planning, legal, and a host of other RA-related matters, many of which have come before the board, while others have come before the DRB and the P&Z. I am committed to working with the members of the Lake Ann Tall Oaks District in hearing their concerns and seeking solutions for issues which may be within RA's purview. I also want to thank several persons for urging me to run. Most recently, in the election committee orientation held on January 11th for persons interested in running for the board, they have included the president of the board, Karen Anton, and Ed Abbott, the chair of the elections committee. These were not necessarily endorsements, but they did urge me to run. Larry Butler noted that he was looking forward to seeing my platform. I attended the meeting as I have done for many years. This time, I was the only potential candidate who attended the meeting. Secondly, I ask you to postpone the selection of the new CEO until the new board is seated. This is not because I am running. Rather, it is because at least 2 and perhaps even 3 members of the board will only be serving for the next 2 months, and in April will no longer be serving, while those recently elected will be serving for 3 more years. It is inappropriate for the present board membership to select the new CEO, and then for some of them to simply not continue to work with that person as board members. The difference in terms of time is relatively small, at most 1 or 2 months of deferral time, while the impact could be relatively great, 3 years and more. Moreover, this is a selection that will have a great impact, as there are presently a large number of senior leadership positions which will have to be filled, in which the CEO will play a large part. These include the chief financial officer, the human resources chief, the environmental senior leadership person, and the new senior IT person. Things done merely to meet an artificial deadline for which there is no compelling reason often do not result in the best choices. The selection of the new CEO is clearly a critical choice to be made, and it should be done by those who will have to live with the results of that choice. Thank you for your time and consideration of these matters.
Thank you. Okay, no other member comments? All right, then we're moving on to item E, cluster outreach update, which is informational. Were there any questions about that? Hi, Cam Adams.
Been the most interesting board meeting ever. So happy to answer any questions on cluster outreach. Megan is also on the call.
Hi, Megan. Were there any questions for Cam or Megan? I don't have a question, but I did want to bring up before the board that per a motion that was made back in May of 2020. Thank you, Christina, for that speedy research. There was the board voted to have these cluster outreach updates bi-monthly. And I'm wondering if we still feel that that's necessary, or can we move to quarterly? Any thoughts on that? Tim?
I think it's a great idea. I think that we impose too many reporting requirements and we never relax them. And I think when this reporting requirement was initially opposed, maybe there was some reason to have the frequency, but the Covenant staff is doing such an outstanding job. I think your proposal, Madam President, goes in the right direction. Thank you.
Yes, Bob.
I agree with Tim. I think that the quarterly would be certainly adequate.
Okay, any other?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we lengthen the reporting periods to quarterly.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. Does this require rescinding the old motion, Tony, or can we just make a new motion to change to quarterly?
You're essentially amending the previous motion. So I think you're fine.
Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Jennifer and then Tim.
Kim, can you help me? Because but in your report, it says that you've worked on the DRB has worked on updating resolution 8 and resolution 10. Can you just give me a synopsis of what those resolutions are? Is one like the electric vehicle? I didn't even.
No.
Okay. Can you just brief us a little bit about what those are?
Sure, absolutely.
Is it? I'm not sure that speaks to the motion that's on the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we voted.
No, we didn't vote. This is just.
Sorry, my fault.
Yes, Tim.
I'll wait until after.
Okay.
I just want to state the obvious, which is we love your reports, and it's usually the best part of the board meeting because of the fantastic work that
Certainly is so far.
so far, especially tonight. But the reason I support this motion is that I would like to free up more of your time to do the good work that you're doing in less time spent interfacing with us. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of changing the report requirement to quarterly from bi-monthly? Okay.
Mike?
Anybody? Mike, are you in favor or no? Okay, so that's unanimous. Okay. That's your present for tonight, Pam. Yes, Jennifer, go ahead with your question.
I'm sorry. I was so in favor. I just thought we had already said yes. But my follow-up question for the actual report was, can you remind the board what the DRB resolution 8 and 10 topics are?
Sure. So resolution 8 is in regards to the DRB application procedures, and it outlines what requirements there need to be fulfilled in order to submit a DRB application and for the DRB to review that application. And resolution 10 is related to the affected parties. And based on feedback from the DRB themselves, from staff, from several board members, our joint meeting with the board last year, and our survey that we send out post the DRB process, we're culminating all of the feedback into making some minor adjustments to both resolutions to present to the DRB after it's reviewed with legal counsel for that to then come to the board sometime this year.
I would then kind of ask as a follow-up to that, you know, to you and Sarah and Bob, since you all are participating, how are you guys feeling about the trajectory of those resolutions? And is there any feedback that would be helpful for you guys to have from the board going into that process?
I can't speak for Sarah or Bob. I saw Bob talking. I'm not sure if he had a comment.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the application process itself works, the improvements that have been made to it work exceedingly well. I find that some of our members don't pay attention to the new process and are filing under the old process, which, you know, imposes an additional burden on staff, which they handle very gracefully. The suggestions that have been made are very worthy ones, and I think it does improve the process immensely, because I'm never cease to be amazed at the number of applications that are handled on a monthly basis and the issues that come up.
So just so everyone knows, the goal of revisions to both of these resolutions is to better serve the member in their experience with the DRB process. Any other questions?
Nope, thank you.
Welcome.
Sarah?
I have just a question. I think Tom probably brought it up with you before. Is there a way we can explore grants for the EV chargers for both RA properties as well as our cluster member properties? Or do you need anything from the board that would help you do that?
I don't want to speak for Larry, but I think if the board is interested in doing something like that, I would recommend the board direct Larry to do so.
Larry, your thoughts?
That was a classic deflection. And I was about to pay you a great compliment. I'm very impressed with, you know, Cam's work with the DRB and trying to move them forward. So I encourage him to keep at that. With respect to exploring grants, yeah, we can, if you have ideas, if you've heard of grants, if you know sources, send them my way and we will certainly take a look at them. You know, there is the question of EV charging stations on RA property. I know when Kimberly Horn did the research for us initially on that, it is, you know, staff has some concerns about that. And I think that should be a different discussion, because the places where we would put those are probably in parking lots where, you know, people would go charge their cars while patrons are trying to find a place to park, because a lot of our facilities are underparked. So there are a number of concerns, but I think that warrants a separate discussion. But happy to look into it.
And Larry, wouldn't we have to go through Friends of Reston to pursue any grants for this?
It depends on the granting authority, quite frankly. Sometimes C4s are eligible. More often than not, C3s are eligible for those kinds of things. But again, it depends on the granting authority.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else for Cam or Megan? Yes, Jennifer.
I just had a follow-up to Larry. You said, you know, we should defer that topic to a or have more discussions about it, where do you think those discussions should be? Should we, ask one of our committees to take a discussion like that up? Should we take it up as a board at a future meeting?
I think I'm sure the EAC would love to discuss that. And I think the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, because they're looking at facilities, what facility changes might be warranted looking down the pike. As an example, we're looking at Shadowwood Pool. Chris is going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. Very limited parking there. And, to provide something for the membership in an already limited resource basis is, something we need to think really, really hard about.
And then I would ask that the EAC and the PrAC liaisons maybe take that up for consideration for a work plan item for your teams. For their
Jennifer,
committees.
if I could add in, I think EAC did look at it last year. Larry, correct me if I'm wrong. EAC did a report on charging stations.
I have to look into that, Sarah. I know.
Yes, they did.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim. Yeah, because I don't participate in all those meetings. So what I think we can do, we can resurrect all the information that's been developed already, and then use that as kind of a starting point for the future discussion.
And I would only revisit it if there is any new grant money that maybe makes it worth our time. That's what I was going with the grant money.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I could throw in there too, just in terms of
Guys,
grant
just a
money,
reminder, if you want to be recognized, everybody, please raise your hand.
I think Aaron was
This
first.
is
so
a
go
board
ahead.
meeting. Okay. Yes, Aaron.
Two items. One, this particular discussion isn't on our agenda, so I'm not entirely sure it's appropriate. Having said that, I'm going to dive in. I think the legal committee could also take a look at this, because from what I understand, the liability of a charging station is something that Rest Association really needs to decide whether they're willing to take that on or not. So I mean, we've got environmental and facilities as well, but it also it's a significant change to our liability exposure. Thank
Yes,
you.
Tom. Thank you, Aaron.
And I would expand the conversation from grants to also just looking at the infrastructure bill that's been passed, where, $500 million has been put out there or whatever for this. If we were to miss the opportunity to take advantage of that, if we're going to do this type of work at all, we definitely need to review that if that's possible, with whatever committee that might be.
Okay, yeah, I would like to, we are getting off track here by a big discussion about this, so we can put this on the agenda for another meeting perhaps, but as it has been in the past, but I would like to move on if nobody else has any questions about Cam's update. Okay, thank you, Cam. And thank you,
Have a
meeting.
good night.
Thanks, good evening.
Okay, you too. Okay, Chris, capital projects update on the Shadowwood Pool. This is informational also, so what questions do we have for Chris about this? Yes, Sarah.
I know it says informational, but there's literally just 2 slides. So Chris, if you could give us a little more than just saying it's in the process, because we were hoping to hear back from Kimley-Horn, I guess, November, maybe December, and now we're 3 months out. Is there a reason why it's being delayed?
Hold on here. Just trying
Thank
to
you.
pull it up. I know I have to kind of go back and recollect on that part, but in terms of having the report prepared, we were looking to have it done by the January time period. I don't know if we were able to pull something together that detailed that quickly, especially during the holiday season. We did just get the report back recently. We're still digesting it internally. As soon as we have that, kind of looked through and prepared, we will be sending that out. Some of the teasers regarding that I have included in this presentation in terms of what we are looking at and what we'll be reporting back on. Really just the due diligence piece of it to kind of help formulate the planning and scoping phase of the project. So, jurisdictional requirements, what do we do that would then trigger us having to do things with parking or health code or ADA requirements with the county, records research, what are the permit requirements we would have to get depending on what we decide to do to the building? So what are kind of our guardrails? And then those are all the kind of elements we're looking at. And so will we have the opportunity to finally, put all this together and create a summary and get it out to you, that we will definitely be doing that as soon as possible.
Can I get a copy of the report, or do you want me to make like a member request, just the raw report that you have so far?
I believe we could probably provide that to the board without issue, but we're still just getting into some. I had some more questions back for the Kimley Horn team. That was a few things that I felt that were still missing. They suggested the shade study, the solar study, but there wasn't really a recommendation on, okay, well then what do we do to help correct that or change that? And so there's still little pieces like that in there that I want to make sure are addressed before I then send this out to everybody.
And just one last question. On our timeline, we had sort of Jan was our presentation to DRB. So now what's our ETA on that? Do we think before the next meeting, or is it going to be further out?
There would still have to be some conceptual design work done before we could even go to the DRB with anything in particular. We're still getting through the background stage of it. And so I would imagine that before we can go to DRB, we actually have to show them something, and we don't have anything drafted up as of yet that I'm aware of. Kimley Horn might have something in the works, but it's not something we've gotten to just quite yet.
Do you have an ETA? Are we thinking March, April?
I would say probably March is safer than February at this point in terms of having a DRB application prepped. You also have to have a 21-day notification period before you could then even, put onto the agenda for a DRB meeting.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions?
Karen?
Yes, Jennifer.
Do you have any other capital update outside of Shadowwood? And someone can object if they don't think I'm allowed to ask that, but Chris is our capital updates person and just wanted to see progress of other capital projects. Anything going to DRB, any
Specific to, in terms of DRB actively, there isn't anything on the docket. If you want to kind of get into the major projects, I'm assuming
just
Martin Hill, Lake Throw. Lake Throw, we've submitted all of the plan sets to Hubert. They're processing it with the county through a permit expediter. We'll kind of start the clock at that point in terms of when we get a response back from county. There's likely going to be a lot of comments. There'll be a lot of back and forth between all parties involved to then get those cleared and moved. And then hopefully once we start getting some of those first sets of permits that are kind of critical, like the site permit, so we start doing demolition, things of that nature, then we could potentially start getting some equipment on site and actually start, pushing dirt. And then we'll continue to work through getting all the other permits, building, special structural, all those elements will kind of be in progress as we're working on other elements to kind of keep it moving a bit more fluidly and as fast as we can. So that's kind of the set point where we are right now with that. In Barton Hill, and Larry can also chime in on this one, we are working with the county on some of the interpretations and zoning of the site because we are looking at adding lighting to a facility that currently has none. So we're waiting to get some interpretation back from them and clarifications before we're then ready to assemble all that material along with all the other due diligence that Kimley Horn is also working on at that site, same kind of things, utilities, easements, property lines, all those kind of elements, to then assemble all that together to then stage a community project information meeting, either virtually or in person. We're thinking sometime towards the back half of February, we'd be trying to coordinate that. So that's kind of the certain, the timeline for that right now.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to item G, the treasurer's report.
Okay. The treasury report in terms of financials is going to be virtually non-existent. Staff has asked to forego providing financials for the year end at this monthly meeting due to two reasons. One, they are preparing to start the audit earlier this year than in previous years. And then secondly, with the implementation of the new accounting system, that is, they want to make sure everything aligns and foots before they provide information to the membership. The second item that I provided is an analysis of the 2022 member assessment. Since this is the single greatest source of revenue to the association, I thought it would be useful just to show the numbers and get an idea of the other issue that which the fiscal committee has dealt with over the last couple of years, and that is the shift from paying assessments with checks to credit cards. And I bring this up because it's going to be just discussed in the near term by the fiscal committee as to whether we wish to forego the convenience fee or surcharge applied, which we have foregone for the last 2 years. And it will represent, according to Tom Deal, Director of Finance, about $200,000 in foregone revenue. So if you think about it, we've increased the assessment we've decreased revenue by $200,000 and have it be basically substituted with the assessment itself. So we are going to be looking at this issue going forward, and wanted to make the board aware that we'll be coming back to the full board for consideration at a meeting in the next several months. On the second page, just because we don't spend a great deal of time on it, I thought I would provide a summary view of the invested funds in the RRF. At the end of 2021, the fund earned on a net basis 10.69% on a year-over-year basis. And there were unrealized gains of $523,000. We earned in interest and in dividends for the year, $131,000, almost $500. And for the we paid in terms of hard dollar fees to our investment advisor, a little over $30,000.
Point of privilege.
Yes.
I think I'm doing the right one. Can we bring this up for the members to see on the screen? Thank you, Christina.
Okay, if the composition of the $3.9 million, 4% is in cash and equivalents, 17% in bond funds, 58% in stock funds, and 28% in ETFs, which are exchange traded funds, which are a combination of bond and stock. So at the end of the year, we were in compliance with our investment policy, which I've shown on the following page, which was a change that we made back in July to the investment policy to allocate on a target basis 60% of the fund to equity and 40% to fixed income or bonds. And as you can see, there are minimum size. In other words, we don't want the investment in equities to fall below 48%, nor do we want to exceed 72%. At the time that we made, that the board approved the change to the investment policy, we were just about to pierce the 60%, the 60% target, and excuse me, the old target, which was 50%, and the maximum, which was 60. So yeah, by moving these rounds, we've stayed in compliance, and the association has earned a decent return. This is not consistent with the earnings of the stock market over this past year, but it represents a moderately conservative approach to investing funds, and is certainly consistent with the goals that we set forth for the investments. There are two other issues that I wanted to bring forward. One is bidding out Resident Association's insurance portfolio. At the meeting back in June of 2021, a motion was adopted to direct the CEO to continue searching for cost savings as it pertains to the association's insurance coverage, while ensuring that we have adequate coverage for all of the risks that the insurable risks that RA has. CEO Butler has been working with Albert Risk Management Consultants, who did an assessment in early 2021 of the present insurance policy coverages, and have come up with an approach. The consultant and Larry have in principle agreed to providing RA with assistance to identify and select potential bidders, prepare the RFP, and evaluate the bids, both cost and coverages, to make sure we're doing things on an apples to apples basis. And they proposed a 3-phase engagement as with a total cost, if we were to do all 3 phases, of $30,000. Based upon the total 2021-2022 insurance expense, the total engagement, $30,000, would represent about a 3% impact on the total annual insurance expenditure for the association. And we believe, the fiscal committee believes, that this engagement would more than pay for itself in staff commitment time to do the evaluation and in actual cost savings. So I have a proposed motion.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question first?
Certainly. Oh, excuse me.
Bob.
Yes.
Has Reston Association ever evaluated self-insuring for any portion of its risk? If other groups have done so, if we have a low, for example, I worked in Arlington County, and that served us well to segregate a manageable portion of risk and to self-fund the insurance for that. If there's an area where our losses are low, relatively low compared to the premiums we're paying, that might be worth looking at. And I wonder, have we ever done that? And would we be open to at least investigating that?
I would have to defer that question to Larry. I know that it has not been done in the past 5 years, that it's been looked at. It may have been done informally, but it's never been part of the formal process of assessing the insurance portfolio. I think it's worthy of discussion, but I do know from reading their financials that Columbia Association self-insures part of its risks. I don't know at this particular time that it would be a wise decision, but that's a personal prejudice to do so. I think we would be better served in getting an independent assessment as provided by Albert to assist us in getting the optimal coverage at reasonable cost. I think the market is very roiled, like it's very volatile, just like the stock market, as to who's going to be covering what, given the casualty covered, the property coverages experience of the last year. Who's going, and certainly ask Larry to weigh in on what he believes the best course of action would be.
I raised that question because of the significant increase in our insurance coverage costs last year, especially, and there's an upward trend.
There is, yeah. The three things that contribute to that most, John, are the umbrella liability and the dams, and that's a difficult piece because the umbrella liability are those higher ends that take us up to the 25 million, and so trying to self-insure at those levels, I think would be extremely difficult.
Right.
So I think, I think where we have come down on in the past, and we have never self-insured, at least not in my tenure here, is that the base liability, there may be some things that we could look at, but when you get into those higher numbers, I don't know if we have the financial wherewithal to self-insure at those levels.
I was absolutely not thinking of umbrella coverage. I was thinking of smaller, more manageable risk areas where we had low incidence of payments, and where that would compare favorably with rising premiums.
Well, I can certainly bring that task forward with the consultant to look at and as we get it, presumably as we get into this process, to look at where that might be appropriate and where it wouldn't be.
Yeah. My experiences, as I think I said, Arlington County, where I worked for 17 years, used that successfully in certain areas. Doesn't mean that it would apply here, but and I don't want to send you, Larry, off on a wild goose chase if there's no support from a significant number of my fellow board members.
Yeah, the one thing I note too, John, is that municipalities do have the element of sovereign immunity across parts of their activities, which we absolutely do not.
Okay, so Bob, do you want to go ahead with your motion?
Yes, if I might. I move to accept the fiscal committee's recommendation to direct staff to move forward with the proposed consultation with Albert Risk Management to assist Resident Association secure its comprehensive insurance coverages at a cost not to exceed $30,000.
Second, is there a second? John, was that a second from you?
Yes, it was.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay.
Karen, it's Jennifer.
Yes.
I have a quick question for Larry and then a comment. Larry, are you looking for, I know it's not in this motion, but are you looking for a budget amendment to Ari's budget for this? Yet?
Not yet. Yeah, that's a good point. Not yet. I don't believe we'll need one. I mean, based upon our typical annual financials. So if the need bears itself, I will come back to the board for that amendment.
And my comment, and it's very similar because Larry was kind enough to bring this to fiscal, and I gave the same comment in fiscal. I believe we have an approved motion that directed staff to look for opportunities to decrease our insurance. And I see this as Larry taking the team down that road. Absolutely appreciate the update and don't want to discourage this type of update, but I believe the board already gave this authority, and so I don't believe we need to give it again. And that's why I would vote against it, not to discourage the actual activity.
Yes, Bob.
I would just like to remind the board that as a result of the Albert consultation that was completed at the beginning of the year, there was, I don't remember the specific numbers, but there was in the tens of thousands savings from just that engagement. And if I remember correctly, the original Albert engagement was in the $20,000 range. And I don't mean to tell a story out of school about Larry, but neither one of us are property insurance experts. And I think it would be very useful to have that expertise assist us as we go forward from a consulting side as opposed to a sales side.
I see this as a specific motion as opposed to, Jennifer, what I think you were referring to, which was a motion to direct staff to find ways to decrease our insurance costs. So I don't see this as exactly the same thing, and I would be in favor of it. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and opposed? Jennifer, motion carries.
I also have another
Yes.
motion that in fact, I have two other motions I'd like to make.
Okay.
And the first
This is item 7, right?
Yeah, this is our hybrid.
Related to item 7.
Right. The Fiscal Committee firmly supports PRAC's December 2021 recommendation that RE engage professional services to assist and augment in the data gathering for the overall community wants, needs, and desires for facilities and amenities. RE's ability to meet and exceed its members' desired amenities and facilities is dependent upon the wise and judicious use of members' assessments. Fiscal Committee, in conjunction with PRAC, is dependent upon quality information from a true representation of our community. We ask that the board direct staff to develop a professional services proposal and execution timeline, including 2022-2023 budget impact for RA Board of Directors consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. Discussion. Jennifer.
I support the motion, but I want to just emphasize from my perspective that direct member engagement, as we saw PRAC do with Shadowwood, is a high. I'm very supportive of that direct interaction, boots on the ground, us talking to members, and so not only the quantitative but the qualitative information that we get from a consultant. I would hope that staff would be looking for a consultant that would give us both of those. Thanks.
Yes, Tim.
Madam President, I have 3 concerns. The board received an email from PRAC on November 12th asking for $50,000 for this study. But now the estimated dollar range that was provided at the BOC meeting is from $60,000 to $100,000. There's been no explanation from PRAC for why the price tag has gone up so much in just 2 months. Secondly, I understand that all of the prior studies that have been done on member preferences are flawed because they're not representative of Reston as a whole. I understand that. I don't dispute that conclusion. But practice failed to explain how spending another $100,000 is going to fix that problem. The main reason that the prior surveys are not representative is that most Restonians don't want to participate. And we would all like to see greater member engagement on these issues, but unless PrAC explains how the next study is going to be better than the previous studies, some of which were quite expensive, I'm concerned that we'll be throwing good money after bad. I really don't understand the repeated references to Shadowwood. I agree completely. Shadowwood was a tremendous success. The Shadowwood outreach did not impact our assessment. We're talking about $100,000 here, and I don't see how the Shadowwood outreach is really at all relevant to the proposal that's being put forth. And then thirdly, I'm all in favor of member input, but if we're going to do a deep dive into member input, the first question we should ask them is, do you want us to spend $100,000 trying to figure out what you think? $100,000 of your money. I suspect many, if not most of them, would say no. RA members have opportunities to express their views on these issues. These are extremely difficult decisions. And I very much appreciate the input that we have received and will continue to receive from RA members. But I'm not convinced that doing yet another study is going to assist the board in making these difficult decisions. We all know that later this year, we're going to be struggling to keep the assessment from going through the roof. And I'm just not convinced that funding for this study will be money well spent, or that it would justify an even greater increase in our assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Tom, yeah.
Well, first, let me just say, because of the way this was positioned, we don't have anybody from PrAC to really kind of comment on what Tim just said. But I will just, from my position there, simply state that we, as a community, are looking at 5 properties shortly in the next 5 years that we're going to have to redo. We're going to spend well over $100,000. We're going to spend a lot of money to determine what we're going to do with those facilities. PrAC as an organization is doing a phenomenal job in terms of helping the board figure out what to do, giving us the direction. And I think it's just unfair for what we did with Shadowwood was very boots on the ground, and we did a lot of good stuff. But we're talking about all the facilities that are going to be in the property. So we have to look at how, when you look at that from a budget standpoint, unfortunately, $100,000 is going to be a drop in the bucket compared to what's going to be spent. So they really want to be able to have, be able to present to the board, because as was mentioned, we're going to have people coming off the board every single year, and who the commitment going forward is going to continually change. So we need to be able to provide the board with really the foundation to figure out, how do we move forward? How do we finance it? How do we pay for it? And that is just one tiny piece of figuring that out. And again, I'm not probably the best person to speak on this, because I'm not Julie, but at the same time, I think we really need to kind of look at the broad picture of it.
Yes, Larry.
Yeah, I just want to remind the board, so this is not a request to spend money at this point. This is simply to have what will presumably be Laura and I to kind of, go out and investigate, set up a, proposed RFP. What would it look like? What would the range of costs be to do that kind of thing? And it's working directly with PrAC and fiscal on, what kinds of questions and what kind of information do you need if we're going to do something like this. And we've got a member on PrAC who's years in professional survey methodology and so forth that we are going to rely on heavily to do that. So this is not an ask to spend any money right now. This is to put a proposal together for the board's consideration in the future, and whether that comes forward as a 22 budget amendment or something you consider for the 23 budget development, that's entirely up to you all. So it's really just for us to put something together for your consideration. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
Aaron, and then Tim, I saw your hand go up again. Okay.
I just wanted to say that I concur with Tim's comments that when the recommendation does come back off of this motion, and I appreciate, Larry, how you clarified that this is just to go in and get a proposal together. I would like it to be very clear of how we're going to overcome some of the issues that we have with previous studies, and how the money that will be spent on this will achieve a different result, so that we can weigh that cost benefit analysis, because I am also concerned about some larger sums. I would word it a little bit differently. We're spending $4 of each individual member's money. So it's, if we go up to our members and say, hey, would you like to take a survey? It costs you $4. That's 100% no. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Any other discussion? Yes, Bob.
Although I presented this motion, I agree with both Tim and Aaron that if we look at this as another survey, that's what we will get, is another survey, and it will have all of the flaws that previous ones had, because we will never satisfy the requirement that we get as broad a consensus or a view as we need. I've been thinking about this a bit, and many of our members hearken back to Bob Simon's vision of Reston. I think that's where it really should begin. What do we want long-term Reston to be? Are we happy with what it is? Are there changes that we could make as we go forward that are sustainable, that will provide the best value to our members? And, do I have anything more specific than that? There are a lot of ideas, but one of the difficulties is when Bob Simon did this, it was a very small group of developers who had a similar idea that they bought into and developed it, and it worked. And now we are a very mature community, and depending upon which demographic or view you have, can be very, very disparate from where it was when I first moved to Reston.
Thank you. Anybody else?
But I'm not against coming up with a plan to do so. Let's put it that way.
I will support the motion because of it's just giving direction to investigate. How I would vote down the road once I know what the cost would be, I don't know. But there you go. Yes, Jennifer.
And I just wanted, at the last fiscal meeting that we had, it was a joint fiscal and PRAC meeting. And the discussion, part of the discussion that we're having now was very much part of that discussion and a recognition of the cost benefit. So when the two groups were meeting, they did have, they made the motion the way that, or they made the recommendation the way they did because they wanted to make sure that we had the information on what we were getting ourselves into before we had an estimated cost or a discussion of whether it would be worth that cost. So I think that the committees recognize that and are on the same page as us as a board.
Thank you. Okay, we ready to call the question? I'll take that as a yes. All those in favor? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and opposed. That's a 1 opposed. Motion carries. So I have a question, since we moved the consent calendar item number 7 into this portion of the meeting. Do we still have other things to do on this? Or does this satisfy that?
There's one other.
I know
motion.
you have one other, yeah, but I just thought I would say that while it was on my mind, because these are we're voting on fiscal recommendations, fiscal support of these recommendations. Is the expectation that we're going to then be voting on the recommendations from PrAC separately? Honestly don't know.
Well, we covered number 1 on PrAC. So someone on the board during
Because
this
these
agenda item could address number 2 on their list if they wanted.
But this is just fiscals supporting the 2 recommendations, which are the same thing, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just trying to be efficient here. Okay, go ahead with the second one, Bob.
Okay. I move that to accept fiscal's recommendation of PrAC's recommendation that RA allocate a small amount of funds. It was suggested about $20,000 to capture sunshade analysis for each of RA pools. This data is an important element as pool facilities are reviewed and compared for use, desirability, and renovation/repurposing. It may be more prudent to ensure that this analysis is done as each pool facility comes up in the capital planning process. As you may recall, I'll finish this by saying, as you may recall in the Shadowwood study,
Can we get a second on your motion? And then you
okay,
can
I'm
add that,
sorry.
Bob? That's okay.
Excuse me.
Second.
Okay, go ahead,
I
Bob.
was going to say, as you may recall in the Shadowwood study, one of the most frequent negative comments that was made about Shadowwood is that there wasn't enough sunlight because the trees have grown so tall that they shade the pool area throughout a majority of the day. And PrAC recognized this as an issue that probably would be applied to virtually all the pools in Reston as they are redeveloped. So that's the basis of this, as was discussed at the last joint meeting of fiscal and PrAC.
There is some money in the current budget for that, right?
Yes.
Jennifer, you have your hand up and you're nodding, so go ahead.
I made the motion to put money in the budget to do sunshade studies and conferred with Larry and Laura, beforehand, and that was their preference to do them as they came up. So I believe we have already allocated the money that we need for 2022.
That's
And
what I thought too.
I'm not in favor at this point unless somebody has a reason to allocate more.
Larry?
Yeah, that money is already budgeted. And when you see the initial report for Shadowwood that Chris referenced a little bit ago, you will see the shade study for Shadowwood because we're doing it as part of a refurbishment.
So
It's underway.
So we don't need this motion, is that?
I don't believe so.
Okay. I don't think so either. Any other discussion? Okay, do you want to rescind do you withdraw the motion or do you
I
want
move to rescind, remove.
to withdraw?
I move to remove or rescind my motion.
Okay.
Tom, would you remove
second.
your second? Okay, I think we're done.
I guess we have to vote on that and then
Well,
vote on the
I believe.
rescinded motion.
the
I don't,
motion is to withdraw.
to
your
withdraw,
motion.
yeah.
I withdraw my
there's no-
motion.
There's no vote
So then
required.
there's no other action necessary if you withdraw it, right?
It's withdrawn. Consider it withdrawn.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So are we done, or was there something else we needed to do with regarding what we removed from the consent calendar? I'm still confused.
I believe that covers everything. from-
Okay. Excellent. So and that's it for your report, Bob?
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next is a land use update.
Thank you, Madam President. And Christina, could you please put the PowerPoint up?
Hopefully folks have had a chance to look at this too as an informational item, but go ahead, John.
Thank you. And if we could move directly to page 2, Christina. Page 2. So tonight, by way of exception, I'm going to begin with 2 non-comprehensive plan issues. The first is on the screen. The second came up because of last night's Reston Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. So as some of you may know, back in 2018, Fairfax County published an analysis called the Reston Network Analysis Final Report. And that studied the impacts of development, old and new development in the TSAs on the TSA intersections within the TSA. They failed to study any of the impacts of the new TSA development and the traffic generated by that on non-TSA intersections. Reston Association urged them in 2018 to do the study, and it has finally happened. It has been approved, and it is beginning to be studied. So this will model the effects using the year 2040 as the modeling year. It will study the effects, as I said, on the TSA development, on non-TSA RA Reston intersections. The board had input. MTAC had a lot of input in choosing 7 representative intersections that would give us a good measure of it. They're listed there. You can read it. The study will last 8 months. The consultant has been hired, Jacobs. It's due to be completed in the fall of 2022. I'm sorry, I said I was thinking of a different study that I'm working on now. They will model both mid build out in 2023 and full build out in 2050, the impacts for those. They will then model various improvement scenarios, from very light improvements to more serious improvements, and if needed, to overcome any congestion problems caused by this development. And there will be 2 draft report meetings with RA and 1 with the general Reston community. So I think this is a very positive development as we try to forecast our transportation future. Any questions on that? Yes,
I
sir.
have one. North Shore crosses Wheelie at 2 points. Are they studying both of them?
No, they're doing the one, and I should have that. It's the one. I'll get back to you on which one it is. It's a.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I should. It does cross in 2 places. Yep. Any other questions? Okay, the second thing, last night, the Reston P&G committee heard testimony on the Fannie Mae Townhouse development proposal. And I would like Larry to brief us on what arose from that and something that may require the board's action. Larry?
Sure. So I'll just give a real high-level overview of this, having been in conversations with the developer for some time now. A partnership that includes Wheelock, the owner of Hidden Creek Country Club, has a contract purchase on, we call it the Fannie Mae building, directly across from Plaza America on American Dream Way. It is a very, very high-tech building. It's got its own water supply, emergency water supply generators and stuff, underground parking and so forth. That site, which is over 20 acres, includes the 3 ponds along the WNOD trail. So for those of you who have been on the WNOD near the 7-Eleven, there's a little parking area there. It's that complex. The current zoning approval is for the addition of I think 400,000, I believe it's 400,000 more square feet of commercial office. The contract purchasers, which includes Wheelock, are proposing 90 townhomes. These would be, these sort of modern, squared off, I think 4-story townhomes. And they have been before the Planning and Zoning Committee, I think at least 3 times now, and they came for a vote, actually night before last. They got a deferral. The key elements of concern with the community are the number of units, the density. They're currently proposing 90 units. Access to Plaza America's sort of to and through the site. And part of that access includes a pathway that we convinced Fannie Mae to allow us to tie into. So for those of you who have walked that, Aaron, I suspect you have, there's a gate near the Ivy Oak condominiums that comes out the North Shore, where we did a little traffic calming as part of that project. And the developer has committed that to be public access right now. When we were working with Fannie Mae, and this took a number of years to complete, they would not commit it to a permanent easement. Part of the reason for that is that after we got into it, they ended up paying most of the costs. So we paid for a portion of it, which includes the little bump outs in North Shore Drive. But, we didn't win that battle. But they have committed to providing public access for that, as well as providing public access to the ponds and the new pathways around the ponds, increasing the open space, doing a number of other things. The community is still has concerns with respect to making sure that all that is publicly accessible. The developer is, I haven't seen their draft proffers, but they said, we're putting that in the proffers. And a big concern raised by the Planning and Zoning Committee is that these units should become part of RA. And I've had several discussions with Steve Coniglio, who's the representative for the Wheelock portion and the local contingent about that. And there's been no resolution to that. Some of the P&Z members said, hey, that's going to be a game changer. I can't vote for this if you're not going to be part of RA. So those discussions need to continue. With respect to the ponds themselves, if the developer is going to put those or make those publicly accessible, then we don't need to be the owners of those ponds. In my very original discussions with Steve, we talked about sort of the quid pro quo of, if you want to, make these units RA members, perhaps, and it was really just a point of discussion, which we never really got into, perhaps, we could be part of the management of the ponds since that's in our wheelhouse already. But with them committing to making those accessible, I don't see that we need to be involved in that realm. So again, they're hoping to come back February 28th, I think, is the next P&Z meeting, which is about a week and a half or something like that before the at least currently scheduled Planning Commission meeting. The Board of Supervisors hearing and meeting has not yet been set for that. And I know that the local neighborhoods around there still have, some concerns. Again, access to the ponds, access to and through the site, the number of units and things like that. So that's kind of a high level overview of, what's currently the current status of it. And I know that Jennifer's been involved in a little bit in this as well with respect to some of the neighborhood concerns. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions, but that's, again, trying to keep this at a kind of a summary level.
Thank you, Larry.
Looked like Sarah had a question.
Sarah, please.
I do. Thank you. Larry, I have a couple of questions, and then if nobody has a motion, I might make a motion on this. Do we know what price range the townhomes would be in? Any indication?
My guess is that they're going to be around 800, and they have committed to, gosh, so I get this right, 6 WDU and actually 6 ADU townhomes as well. And they're going to proffer that.
And do you have an approximate cost for maintaining the ponds annually?
I don't. I haven't worked that out because we never got that far in our discussions. And now that they have committed those to be public, I'm happy for them to take care of those for the public enjoyment, frankly. And I should also note that the part of the concern with the current building, which is going to remain, is that they don't know who the future tenant might be. If there's a future tenant that wants, kind of a secure landscape, if you will, they want to maintain that possibility. But there's going to be an umbrella association of the commercial building as well as the townhouses, so that the cost to maintain the pond and the landscape and so forth is not going to be borne just by the homeowners. It'll also be the owners and or tenants of the commercial office building on that site.
I'm glad. We don't want to take that on. I'm happy that we're not taking that on. Ideally, I can just share how I would like to see this proceed, but I'm sure Jennifer and Bob and others who are following you probably have some thoughts. I agree. Joining RA should be sort of a no-brainer. The guaranteed sort of public access, the walkways and pathways, is something we need to advocate for our members. So if we could sort of take a position piece on that and have Tony draft a position letter, so to say, on RA's behalf, could we share it with the clusters and condos surrounding for a 2-week feedback period? And once we've got it back, send it as our formal letter. This is our stance. This is where RA is on this topic to Wheelock. So it gives you some support as well when you go back to negotiate. And copy P&Z, copy Walter, copy the clusters. So it's a very transparent stance that we're taking on this topic. Just my thoughts. I'm happy to make it as a motion if we need it to.
Jennifer, did I see your hand up earlier?
I'm okay with Sarah's approach. I've attempted to write a motion, but it's not, a motion like this can't be short and sweet because it includes board positions. And then my other comments are, Tim, as the EAC liaison, I think that it would be great if they were willing to take a look at the parcel in question and give us any feedback or input into some positions related to the environmental impacts. And certainly staff can assist EAC with that. If you're willing to take that to the EAC meeting, I know you have one coming up next week, and this would be kind of last minute, but this proposal is moving fast and furious and is scheduled to go to the Planning Commission. I think it's March 9th and to P&Z on February 20th. So it'll be good to have feedback faster rather than later. And I also would like to see the board, and I don't know that we need a motion for this, but at the P&Z meeting, it's often with RA's involvement, if we do take official positions, Larry goes to that meeting and for his ability to represent RA freely on our positions and answer any questions that they might have from his perspective on our behalf. They don't do formal testimony, but that engagement I think is really important from an RA perspective at the P&Z meeting. And we might also consider giving more formal testimony at the Planning Commission meeting. But I'd like to see us support that so Larry can represent us. And I wrote a motion unless there's others that have comments, I'm happy to try to add things if you have other comments.
Yes, Bob.
Since the issue of the maintenance of the ponds is now off the table, I think the single most important issue is continued access from North Shore to the plaza is the single greatest impact on those neighborhoods, because right now it is limited to an easement that Larry and others at RA were able to negotiate to have a gate open from dawn till dusk. And I think that it ought to be 24/7. I think that so that the people have a convenient way that live in the North Shore area north of the golf course, convenient access without having to cross busy roads to get to the plaza.
Larry, is this something that you feel there needs to be a motion on, or just a direction?
I would say that if, with respect to what we've discussed here, I think I know the issues. When we get to making official testimony at the Planning Commission, that would be something that we would, I would draft up with, Jennifer and John perhaps, and send that around to the board. And we might be able to even do that at the February board meeting. Because that truly is an official position. At this point, it's reiterating, as Bob said, the important things we heard at P&Z that really need to happen, and to make sure that there's a committal to those.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Yes, Sarah?
Karen, I'd like to make the motion just because, the two pieces that I'd like to see in there is one, Joni be the one letter, because have legalese in there. And then the second piece is to solicit feedback from the communities who are our members that might be impacted. And that will give us a better idea to shape our testimony. So if, Jennifer, do you want to go with your motion first, or do you want me to make mine? Either ways, I'm fine with it.
I can take a stab at it and can edit on the fly if you want. Okay. So I motion to direct legal counsel to draft a letter to be circulated to the surrounding clusters and members adjacent to the parcel, in the Fannie Mae development parcel, in addition to CCing Walter Alcorn and the representative at Wheelock, to include that the RA board believes the developer should include the residential units as part of our association. And 2, the RA board believes that the RA covenant land near this parcel should have multimodal access to and through the proposed development 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Does that
I'll
work for you, Sarah?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, second,
Does that work for you, Sarah?
Could you repeat it again? I just have a minor tweaks, maybe. Could you repeat it again?
Sure.
I just wanted
the whole
to put
motion or just the positions?
So the only part that I had, I don't think you have, is I have a Form ETA to get feedback by 14 days.
Sure. So I will add circulate the surrounding clusters in Wheelock.
And you're circulating to the surrounding clusters, not to Wheelock and Walter. We're giving it to Wheelock and Walter after we have it, correct?
CC, I said CC for Walter and Wheelock. So circulating it to the surrounding clusters and CCing Walter and
So
Wheelock.
I have it as draft with cluster, solicit or share the draft with clusters and condos impacted and solicit feedback, following which the final letter is presented
I
to
see.
Wheelock, copying P&Z, Walter, and clusters.
Okay.
So
You
that
want
if
the
we can-
feedback first and
Right.
then send it. I see.
Right,
Yep.
so that we can incorporate the feedback if we wanted to. Does that make
I would-
sense, Larry?
I would accept that edit.
Okay.
And by, you said 14 days? Do you want
When do you guys need it for, when do they come back?
PNC is in February 20th. So
I think it's later
Five.
of President's Day, and I put it on my calendar.
I thought it was the 28th, but
I think it's the 28th.
got it. So by February 22nd, I don't know when those materials are due for PNC, Larry.
They try to get them out, the weekend before. So why don't we say by Monday,
18.
whatever the day after President's Day, I think, or unless President's Day is the
20,
week before.
22nd.
22nd. Yeah, that
The
should
day
work.
after.
Mhm. It's a little bit of a tight turnaround, but as you said, this thing's moving fast. So
Tony, are you okay with drafting the piece?
Sure.
he's speechless.
We're just hoping you can give some strong language. That's it.
So as soon as you're ready, Jennifer, just repeat the motion or state the motion as tweaked, and then we'll get a second. And
So I withdraw my previous motion.
was it seconded?
Yeah, I think Mike, did you second?
John.
It? John. No, it was John. Okay.
Yes.
So
And I
You're good with
withdraw my second.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jen.
So let's try this again. So I motion to direct our legal counsel to draft a letter to be circulated to the surrounding clusters and members adjacent to the Fannie Mae development parcel. And upon receiving feedback, send the final version to Walter, Wheelock, and P&Z by February 22nd to include that the RA board believes the developer should include the residential units of their parcel as part of the association, and that the RA board believes that the RA covenant land near this parcel should have multimodal access to and through the proposed development 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Did
Second.
I get it, Sarah?
So,
We have a second discussion. Yes, Larry.
I just have a question. Is it your intent, Jennifer, to have Tony sign that letter, or should it come from Karen, or?
Tony doesn't have authority to sign that letter.
I think
Then I would say, Karen.
Yeah.
Do I need to add that to the motion? I mean, it's the board's position and you sign on our behalf, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that's not needed in the motion since you're a spokesperson.
I don't know that it has to be designated.
Okay.
If it's coming from the board, I'll sign it.
Yeah.
Okay, more discussion? All those in favor? Okay, it looks like that's unanimous. That carries.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank thank you, everyone. I appreciate you taking, and it was not a lot of time to study it, but I appreciate you guys taking those of us who have been studying it quickly and allowing this to pass.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before leaving that first page, let me give an answer to Director Webb's question. It is the intersection of North Shore Drive and Wheelie near Tall Oaks. So the next page of the slide or the PowerPoint is just a quick overview of the process schedule. So the next meeting is Monday, January 31st. We thought that might be our last. We probably will have to have at least one in February. Right now, there are still 3 chapter teams that are working on their final product. They're all ready to be examined for substantive approval by the task force. Those are the major document, which is the major chapter, which is land use. The second is housing. The third is environment. And then there will be a review of the task force chapter drafts by county staff, continuing. It started in September and it will be continuing for another couple months. The task force then will vote on the staff reviewed and task force revised chapters sometime after January. Probably now it will be after February or in the middle of February. Then the community engagement feedback process will begin late February and go through June. And that will include a meeting with the Reston Association Board, with Supervisor Alcorn, and then the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors are estimated to begin their hearings, to hold their hearings in fall of 2022. Any questions about the schedule? Skip the next page. Everyone has heard the next page before. That is, Larry and I are not taking a vote until the whole board votes.
John, I have a quick question.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. We had at one point discussed Ari having a listening session with our members. Do we have an ETA? When do we want to do that?
I was giving you the task force. I think we already said that we would hold our own listening session before Walter comes. Yes. So we even set a date for that. I didn't put it in here. I think it was in April, as I recall. Is that right?
It was March. I think it was going to be, it really depended on when the work got finished. But in our last conversation with Walter, it'd be March or April. Is the likely time frame.
So that's with Walter, but before Walter, we did agree, Sarah's right, that we would have an input session with our own general members. So.
And we did have a date. So do we need to change the date? Do we need to change that motion at all?
Let me check that. Let me go back and check that.
Okay, thank you.
The next page, please. So you've seen much of this before, that you know what the major issues are. There's one thing I want to direct your attention to, and that's so the transportation chapter was substantively approved by the task force in December. There is still a concern, especially on the part of the neighborhood in Polo Fields, about a proposed grade separated intersection at Sunrise Valley Drive and Fairfax County Parkway. So that was left in by the task force in its vote. It was left in. There was a proviso added that that no advanced design is no design has been done on this. They only have they only have planning studies, which are very large order of magnitude estimates of things. So there's no design done yet, but before significant design gets underway, we have a proviso in the current plan that the county needs to engage the nearby community and indeed everyone affected by it in the county on that particular intersection, the proposed grade separated intersection. It's a complex issue. I'm working very hard with both Fairfax County DOT and Larry and Karen and I with the Polo Fields community to try to narrow the differences here. But just to let you know, that's going on. That's all I really have to say on land use. Any questions on this last slide?
Hey, John,
Yes.
it's Tim. There's been some discussion of having EAC review and provide the board comments on the energy and environment chapter. When would that chapter be available for their review?
There are draft versions of it now, Tim. The environmental energy and environmental chapter will probably be handled, if not on January 31st, then in early February meeting.
So if they wanted to make recommendations to the board, it would be best to wait until the February draft comes out?
No, I think if they want to, what they can do is get a hold of the draft, and I will get it to you. So you want both the environmental and energy chapter. I should say that the EAC had significant and very effective input into the environmental and energy chapter already. So
right.
So, but they've not commented on the final version, which has just is being completed now. So I will make sure that you get a copy of that. Okay.
Thanks. I'd like to make a motion that the board request EAC to review and make timely recommendations to the board regarding the environment chapter.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Jennifer has a question, I believe, or a comment.
Okay, she's not on my screen right now.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I support your motion, Tim. And we can do it separately. I'd like to see them come back to the board by May, if that's possible. But I'd also, I was just going to encourage, but I would like to see PRAC and MTAC also take a look at their applicable chapters and do the same thing with parks and open space and the transportation chapters for the board, so that we can get some positions that each of these committees think that we should take and some suggested edits to the chapters.
And MTAC has already agreed to bring, Mike McDermott, the chair of MTAC, has already agreed to put it on the February MTAC agenda. Or in fact, it may be the, yeah, it's the next, yeah. It's
February, he said, yeah.
The February one, right. And so there's no reason why PRAC couldn't do the same, so.
So Tim, would you, and I forget who seconded it, be amenable to adding MTAC and PRAC to your list?
Sure.
And I
Now,
said,
let me just. You would want that, I think, before the supervisor meets with us. So the date of of May had been mentioned. I think that's late. Larry, is that correct? I mean, your conversations, Karen, your and Larry's conversations with Supervisor Alcorn?
Yeah, I think,
We talked about something in early March with
well, it really depends on when the comments from staff come back on the full draft. That's the key element in my mind. And that it's a little bit of a moving target right now. I think the beginning of April is probably a pretty decent target. But again, I mean, you all are at those meetings as well. We're trying to move it, but you know, we don't cover everything at each meeting, and so it's there's a little bit of push going on.
what were we talking about with Walter, Larry, about something having to happen before March 15th? What am I thinking of? Calling a special board
I'm
meeting or
recalling.
something. I'll have to check my notes. In fact,
Karen,
yep.
I just want to point out in Tim's motion, it didn't have a date. So I think that we can be fluid and work with our board liaisons to update them on when is most appropriate based on the movement of the task force.
Okay.
I said May because currently the Walter's thinking about going out to the community for these meetings,
Right.
you know, in May. So or I think it was June, sorry. So I thought
So
no
I'm
later then.
Yeah, again, just because, as had been pointed out before, we do an awful lot of motions where sometimes I don't know if they're necessary. Like, as John was explaining in communication with Mike McDermott, they're already on board with doing this. Does it need to be formalized in a motion?
Can we defer to Tony? Because I thought we had to direct the advisory committees to take up topics. And
Yes.
I didn't see it in the work plans, which is why I was concerned about the work plans on the consent calendar earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Bob. You're on mute.
The telephone was ringing, so I had turned it off. I just want to remind my fellow board members that I sent them the latest copy of the environmental stewardship chapter on Monday. So you do have at least one of the chapters, which I know the authors of which were very happy to get input from interested parties, all interested parties before it was put to a vote by the task force.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on the motion?
Can I
Yes.
just respond to that quickly? I mean, you're raising a very good point. We not only need a deadline for comments, we need to know when to start. We can have them review the existing draft, but if there's going to be staff input or some other milestone, it would so that it would make more sense for them to wait. We can do that too. So I need feedback on which draft should they use to review, and then, you know, at some point in the future, we can give them a hard deadline as to when you need the comments back.
Yes, Bob.
I've followed the work of the task force, and John, you can certainly disagree with me if I've got it wrong. But once a draft has been approved by the task force, the task force work is done until they receive comment back from the county. And the county, at least I'm given to understand they want to reply to the entire plan and not do it piecemeal. Although they've reviewed pieces of the plan, but their intent is to provide comments on all of it. So I don't know when the appropriate time is, but earlier comments, the earlier the task force gets the comments, the better.
Now, Walter spoke about having the community outreach process, as Jennifer said, May through July. In our last meeting, I'm looking up on the wall because I have this plastered on my wall. But it was said that it could begin in April, you know, because we are, while Bob is right that Fairfax County staff wants to see the comprehensive plan as a whole, they are doing chapter by chapter reviews also. So I would say we do not want to give them to our committees until at least the chapter by chapter review has been done, as Larry pointed out earlier. So,
Yes, Bob.
One last observation based on the work that I did on the last iteration of the plan. The public hearings that were held once the plan was developed, in my opinion, were very ineffective to make any. In fact, there were no changes incorporated in the final plan as a result of any of the hearings that were done post completion of the review by the county staff back in 2015. Not a word.
you know, Walter.
So again, the earlier the better.
Yeah.
Okay.
You feel strongly about something,
So
get it in.
where are we on the motion?
So perhaps we could say that we direct our advisory committees, especially EAC, PRAC, and MTAC, to give the board feedback on these chapters at a time to be determined by the review schedule of those, but probably beginning the review, or having the review completed by the end of April is what I would say. That's the target goal. With the target, does that make sense, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Yes, makes sense to me.
Okay.
Between February and April, end of April, this should occur.
Okay, so that motion had been seconded, right? So do you need to do any amending to it, or are we okay with it the way it is?
I think we're okay because as Jennifer said, the motion did not have specific dates.
Okay. Okay. Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor? Okay, looks unanimous to me. Okay.
Thank you all.
John.
That's all I have unless there are further questions.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Public hearing, addition to property. Larry Butler.
Make sure I'm off mute there. Yeah, so I'll do an introduction here. You all have heard of this before, so I'm just going to give again a high-level overview, and then Karen, Madam President, can open it up if there's anybody from the public who wants to make comments. So Pulte is in 40 townhomes, project called the Reston Arboretum. It is broken ground. It is immediately adjacent to the Sunrise Valley wetlands, across Sunrise Valley from Polo Fields, and it is it's in the TSA. These are all for sale units. And when we worked with Pulte to bring in the lofts at Reston Station, which are part of Reston Association over near the Wheelie Metro Station, they had indicated, hey, we're developing another site and you might be interested. So we maintained contact with them. And as I have discussed with you all prior, they have agreed to bring in these 40 units into Reston Association, full dues paying members. They have agreed to provide a $1,000 contribution per unit, which would come in at the time of sale to a purchaser. And then the purchaser then would, for that year, would pay the annual assessment on a prorated basis based on when the unit closed. In addition, the architectural specifications and design parameters that were approved through Fairfax County, that the architecture and what we're concerned about is the exterior, would essentially become the cluster standards going forward until such time as that the association there wanted to change them, and that they would go through our regular process. One interesting thing about this too, I should note, is that this gives us, if approved, it gives us members immediately adjacent to the wetlands. And I understand because of an inquiry staff recently got, is that the buildings on Monroe Street that own the wetlands are about to be sold. So we were working with we got contacted by a local law firm, a planner working for them about some documents. And so we recommended they go directly to the horse's mouth, which was Wetland Studies, who designed, permitted, constructed, and monitored that site for many, many years. So, so that's really it in a nutshell. Staff's recommendation is that the board vote favorably to bring these units into RA. Again, the adjacency to polo fields, I think, is a plus. The only on-site amenities they will have, I believe they've got a let's call it a parklet. I know not, people don't like that word, but it's a little parklet. There will be no property on their side that we will be maintaining. So I think it's a win-win, not only for them, but for also Reston Association, to become the fourth property in the TSA between Sunrise Valley and Sunset Hills, of course, that would be brought into Reston Association. I'm happy to try to answer any questions. And they've made a commitment, and I'll leave it at that. So if the board has any questions, and then Karen, if there are any members that want to comment about this specific request.
Great. Anything from the board? Bob, is that an okay?
No. I've
Or
got a
you have
pen in
your
my
hand?
hand. Sorry. Larry, you mentioned 4 projects have now become members other than Pulte. I remember I just had a senior moment. There's one.
Lofts.
I'm sorry, the loft.
Lofts, yeah. Reston Loft.
Yes,
What are
the
the others?
lofts. The lofts is a Pulte project, and that's again over on the east of Wheelie, by the Wheelie Metro Station. That's condos and 2-over-2 townhouses. Sunrise Square, which is the Seekis development, which are townhomes and a small condo building on Sunrise Valley Drive. That's the one where the old API building was, unfortunately. And then right across to the street from them is Valiant Park, which is a Toll Brothers project.
Thank you.
And there have been a couple other additions to the property as well. There were homes down off Triple Crown Road that were back where Renette Holkowitz lives and so forth. That was actually an addition to property. That was part of the old Ross tract, which includes Deepwood and St. John Newman Church. And then Polo Fields, the entirety of Polo Fields was also an addition to property way back in the 80s.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the board before I see if any members have anything to say? Okay, any members who are with us, if you would just put the raise hand signal, or if you're more comfortable, just turn on your video and raise your hand and I'll recognize you. I'm not seeing anything or hearing anything. Okay. So,
Karen,
yes.
can Christina bring up the picture just for the record that we have what we're talking about on screen at some point during this meeting? Even if it's like
Mike's doing that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Christina, if you were to put up the color version, that's a better descriptor that you added to the packet after we got it from Pulte. There you go.
Madam Chair, I will make a motion in
Yes.
accordance with Article 2, Section 2.2 of the Reston Deed, move to approve the addition of the Reston Arboretum to the Reston Association, subject to a supplemental declaration drafted in accordance with the following terms and conditions, to be subsequently executed by the owner of the property and the president of the Reston Association on behalf of the Board of Directors and the association. Terms and conditions for addition: number 1, the entire property will be subject to the Reston Deed. Number 2, the establishment of a cluster association or equivalent. And 3, full payment per unit of the annual, the RA annual assessment.
Thank you. I'll second that if nobody else did. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Looks unanimous. Motion carries. Good news. Thank you, Pulte. Okay, I need a motion to convene into executive session. I will move that we convene into executive session.
Second.
Second from you, Aaron. Okay.
Need to speak.
All those in favor? I assume we're all in favor?
Karen, you need to state the reasons.
Oh, I'm sorry. Move that we convene into executive session to discuss and consider and hear contractual matters and personnel matters and to consult with counsel. Aaron, you want to second that again? Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Yep, we're all in favor. Okay. Motion carries. Sorry, and you gave me the motion and I just ignored it. Okay. Okay. Are we all back? Meetings master. Okay. It's doing that funky thing again. Okay, I think we're back now, right?
Yes.
Okay. I move that the Reston Association Board of Directors certifies to the best of each member's knowledge that only those matters appropriate for executive session of a personnel contractual nature and to consult with counsel were discussed or considered by the board during executive session. For a second.
I'll second.
Those in favor? Anybody opposed? Nope, it's unanimous. Okay, I move that in accordance with the association's policies on purchasing and procurement, to approve the contract with Titan Pool Services, Inc. for the Ridge Heights Pool Project. Do I need to state the amount?
No.
Okay, we've gone back and forth on that, I think. Okay, is there a second? Okay, discussion? All those in favor?
I have a discussion.
Yes.
I would like to include the amount since the deed is done, since there's no need for hiding, or not revealing the amount. I would like it to be part of the record.
Is there any reason that we can't do that, Tony? I believe we have done that on occasion.
It doesn't matter. You can do it either way. If you have to sufficiently identify the contract, you could put the amount in. I have no opinion on it. It's like whether you like brownies or chocolate chip cookies.
Okay, how does the board feel about this? Are we all okay with?
I'd like to see them all have the amount in it.
Okay, so let me amend my motion. Move that in accordance with the association's policies on purchasing and procurement to approve the contract with Titan Pool Services for the Ridge Heights Pool Project in the amount of, and I think I wrote this down right, $176,555.
Correct.
Okay, second to that. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, opposed? Mike, was that a nay? That was, you're on mute. Okay, you were just late raising your hand. Okay. All right, that carries. I move that in accordance with the association's policies on purchasing and procurement to approve the change order with Titan Pool Services for the Tall Oaks Pool Project in the amount of $8,100. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Anybody opposed? Oh, motion carries. All right. I believe we are ready for a motion to adjourn. So moved. You're on mute, but I read your lips, Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I think that was a tie between Tom and Bob. All right.
You can have it, Tom.
All those in favor? All right. Have a good rest of your evening, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
1 minute late.
Ah,
1 minute.
1 minute?
That's the closest it's ever been. I picked 9:53 and Tony took the over.
I could have dragged things out if you.
I hope he made it worth
No,
it.
it needed to be just a little snappier.
Have a good night.
I'm sending you all an email.
Colleagues.